Said if I win, it's not because I'm trying to not lose to their best attributes. Is to win with my best attributes.
Welcome to the Fuel Hunt Show.
What's going on, Eagles? Welcome to the Fuel Hunt Show. I'm Joey. I'm here with Drew, and today we are joined by a very special guest, one of the few, but also a law enforcement officer, second-degree black belt, multi-time medalist nationally, right? Jiu-Jitsu competitor.
Yeah, Pan Am national medalist.
Yep. A reader.
Oh, absolutely. Avid reader.
Yeah, avid reader, a stoic philosopher.
One of our very first models.
One of our very first faces of the few.
Yeah,
models.
Swiss Army knife, you know?
That was it all.
So I say all those things, but I'm glad you said that because I regard you as one of the hardest working Eagles in our community, but there's something special about you. I see you working that hard in silence. Like, I don't see you flossing and flexing on the gram. You know, you post your competition photos and things like that, which are amazing. But, like, I don't know if people really understand how much you do in a given week and how hard you work. But we'll get into that a little bit,
awesome.
Right? We'll certainly get into that. So I'm pumped that you're here today. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah.
Long time coming. The few definitely know you from the gram, right? And they know of your competitions and things like that. They typically want to know about your come up. So let's talk about what it was like coming up, growing up, how you found your way into jiu-jitsu, law enforcement. Like, let's start there. And then we'll go into some other stuff first.
Absolutely. And dude, it's an honor to be here, man. Like you said, it's a long time coming. We always every time I visit, we want to talk and it feels like a podcast. Our conversations, but to actually sit down, man, I really appreciate you guys having me on here. But yeah, I mean, I don't look at my childhood or come up as being like anything that out of the ordinary. Like, I didn't have any super, traumatic experience that like conditioned me for, the chaos, so to speak. But, but at the same time, like, I wasn't like, I feel like some people look at me now with how long I've been in jiu-jitsu and my like physicality and stuff like that, and think that like I'm a great athlete, and I'm not, man. Like, I was not athletic at all. Like, I was that skinny, unathletic kid, and even now, like, being like, I'm like athletic for jiu-jitsu, but if you toss like a ball to me, I'd fucking bobble that shit left and right. Like, but I've built myself up for jiu-jitsu, what I need as far as like the physical tools and requirements for that sport. But when I got into it, it was like I got into it because it was the only thing I was really like that I took to. I mean, I played other sports, but I was not an athlete. It was not like there was not a sport that I gravitated toward that I was good at. And
but primarily like physical growing up, playing sports.
Yeah, trying to,
things.
exactly. Exactly. Like any other kid trying them out and everything like that. And I actually got into Taekwondo first because I had some friends who were kind of like me, where like they weren't like, phenomenal athletes and stuff. And it was kind of like, I was like, let me try this shit out. Like, let me try martial arts out.
So you never excelled at any sports, you would say, in like high school, college?
No.
Like, okay.
No, not until martial arts.
You're
really.
jacked now.
Yeah,
you're peeled. And
it's all for show.
I remember we were talking the one time, and I feel like maybe send me a picture from like college or something. I was like, because I was like always this kind of build, and he's equally as jacked in his younger years as he is now.
Well, I think like it's interesting you say that. I feel like I had a propensity for building muscle. Like my dad was in pretty good shape, like without being like an athlete himself, like just from like manual labor and stuff. Like, he always had a good physique and everything like that. I was naturally like lean, but I was skinny. Like, I didn't have like, some kids are just like, they look built even if they're not doing a ton of stuff. Once I started training like Taekwondo, I started lifting then too. I was like, because I was like, let me get a base for this. Let me get.
What age was that?
I was probably 15 maybe, something like that. Yeah. So like right around that age where I was going to be, where like lifting would be a benefit to me. I wasn't like too young. I didn't like start super late.
Sure.
And I started to put on some muscle, and I was already lean. So like, it's not like I had to lose weight. Like, all I could focus on was like lifting and building muscle. So I got real into lifting, got into Taekwondo. And that's where I started to look like an athlete. And then around that time, like, I trained Taekwondo for a couple years. But my cousin exposed me to jiu-jitsu because he was training at the time. He was like 10 years older than me. And same thing, like he was a better athlete, but he was coming out of college, like finishing like track and field and stuff. And then he got into jiu-jitsu, and it was like So for him, that was like an athletic outlet to start the next chapter of like his athletic career.
Sure.
And then he was like, yo, you like, I know you're training Taekwondo and stuff and you enjoy it. He's like, you got to do this shit.
Yeah,
He's
so
like, it's great.
Did you enjoy Taekwondo?
Yeah. For me, because for me, it was like, again, something that I took to a little bit, I could delve into, feel like I was actually like, you know, part, like hitting my stride there. It was like part of, you know, of my identity and stuff. So yeah, I enjoyed it. It gave me like a good base and foundation, good confidence, obviously, like all the things you'd want martial arts to do for you. But then, I started training jiu-jitsu, and it was obviously like a lot more physical and stuff, but I still felt like I was gravitating toward it. And I was one of the, like at the time, like when I started, probably like 16 years old or whatever, like that was young. Now you get kids that are starting like 6, you know, like they're born into it. At the time, like 16, like I was always the youngest one in the room. It was like a bunch of adults.
That's
Sure.
You know, so
That's
I got
cool,
to train
though.
with people stronger than me, and I, you know, so I was always lifting, trying to hold my own, trying to be, you know, match that strength and that physicality.
Do you remember how you felt then? Like being like the youngest kid in the room, completely
I feel
new?
like, you know what?
I guess maybe the Taekwondo helped.
Yeah, it definitely helped where I didn't feel like I was totally out of my element. And I think to an extent it felt like, because I was holding my own, I wasn't like totally, you know, caught off guard by it or like overwhelmed by it. It felt cool to be like the youngest one, because you felt like, man, I'm kind of like,
you're that up and comer, right?
exactly,
Like
you know,
the underdog, or even,
right, like you know, but you felt like you know, you're
much to
holding your
learn.
own, you belong here and
Yeah.
stuff. So it was cool, like, and it wasn't like I was, you know, demolishing people, but I was kind of like, man, it's cool to be young, to be like this kind of outlier as far as compared to all these other guys that are a little bit older, more experienced, stronger, but to still be like accepted by them, to still be appreciated.
We just did a show on, you know, our jiu-jitsu journey over the past like 2+ years or whatever, how we feel about it, what we've learned, and we went through Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which I'm sure you're familiar with, right? And we went through every layer of the pyramid and said like jiu-jitsu checks this pyramid, or checks this box on the pyramid, this one, this one, this one, and just as Dylan was talking, like you said belonging, you said esteem, you said confidence, you know what I mean? Like all of those things. It just checks the box on, especially at a time, you said you were younger, but like at that time, 16 years old or whatever, like you're finding yourself in the world. Like you're looking for that sense of belonging.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's good that you found that type of family and that type of productive outlet for it.
And that's
you
a
know?
good age too, I feel like, because to your point, like when you're starting a little bit older in life, like you guys are, like you have I guess like a particular expectation for like fitting into stuff, being accepted, because you're already like you already have a particular standing in you know, the world and the community and stuff like that as adults. But then you kind of jump into something like that, you almost backtrack where you're like, damn, I'm out of place here. I don't feel like, even if people are welcoming and accepting, like you don't feel accepted as far as like your ability and your standing there. But 16, you're kind of like, you're in between. Like obviously it can still be daunting, but you're not like, you understand that you're still growing, you're still like finding your place, so you can tolerate being like not having that perfect fit right away. And grow with
you
it.
don't really develop that ego when you're the youngest guy in the room. You're supposed to lose, right?
Yeah.
So when you win, it's just cool.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
That's one of the coolest things, and we talked about this on the show, like acceptance of fact, right? At the pinnacle of the pyramid, right? And self-actualization. And that's one of the things, like for me, starting at 40, like I have achievements, you know what I mean? I thought a certain set of thoughts about myself, and very quickly I had to accept that they were not facts.
Yeah.
You know, jiu-jitsu taught me that there was so much more work that I had to do and growth, and I'm like so grateful for that.
Yeah.
You know, because if I never started practicing, I would still be walking around thinking reality is one thing, and it's absolutely not.
And it's cool to, in any like facet of life, to have that realization set in, you know, like whether it's jiu-jitsu, like somebody like me, like, you know, still being able to go to certain rooms and train with certain people and feel and like realize that I still have so much growth left to do and so much progress left to make. Or for you guys, like hitting a certain stride in your endeavors as entrepreneurs and businessmen, feeling like you're doing well, you're hitting your stride, and then, you know, maybe go to a particular convention or talk to a particular individual or business and being like, damn, like we still got a lot of work to do, you know?
Yeah, very powerful stuff.
Holds you accountable.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So you started around 16. When does competition start for you?
I started competing like right away as a white belt, but I would say I did it like back then. It was more like because I felt like obligated, you know, like my cousin was competing a lot, and I was kind of like, I mean, I still wanted to do it. I still did it like of my own volition, but I don't think it was the kind of thing where like if nobody had given me that like push or talked me into it, that I would have just like done on my own. Like, cause again, I wasn't like a super competitive athlete. So that wasn't like ingrained in my, code, genetic code. So it was just like, it was a gradual process. Like I got talked into it, did it, and like, felt okay. Like it wasn't like I was totally overwhelmed. I didn't totally suck. Like, but I wasn't like a natural, like just born competitor.
Sure.
So I did it all through basically every belt level. I took a little bit of a break when I was, going through like the police academy and stuff like that. But I competed like through college and stuff while I was, full-time student and things like that.
Okay.
But I would say it was like black belt where like late brown, early black belt where I kind of like rediscovered myself and felt like now I'm a competitor. Like I feel like I love it. There's things that I get from it that I didn't before.
Yeah. I remember having that conversation with you about you kind of like finding yourself again at that level. Yeah.
So you took a break. You said you took a break from competing, not from jiu-jitsu. So the past 15 years, you've been you never had any time off?
Yeah, like basically at the time. So it's funny because now, like I train now more than I did when I was like in my 20s and stuff. Because at the time there was like, and I guess I'll segue a bit. Like it's we were talking about this earlier. Like jiu-jitsu, like when I started, like you couldn't even watch it on fucking YouTube, let alone Instagram, TikTok. Like having apps dedicated to it.
You can't get away from jiu-jitsu now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I trained a lot, but like I wasn't doing like a lot of people weren't doing 2-a-days and stuff like that because everybody had full-time jobs. Like everybody was doing it on the side. So it was like you either trained like at lunch because you couldn't train at night, or you trained at night because you couldn't train at lunch.
Sure. There was even that kind of class times too. I feel like most schools at the time probably had like 8:00 p.m. jiu-jitsu on Tuesday and Thursday.
Yeah. So I always just trained once a week, but I trained every day basically. Because I had no other obligations really. Like I didn't have any other sports. That was my thing. And so other than like school or after my like early academic career being in college, like things like that, I had no other reason not to go. So I would go. It was like a ritual. I would go. I would train. It was great. That was like my my outlet and my space. And so I did that all through high school, college, and then even when I was taking a break from competing because I was doing other things with like the police academy, being having to be there on the weekends sometimes, things like that. I was still training every day. Get done to police academy and go right to practice. So I never really, other than when I like had an injury that would take a week, 2 weeks, whatever off. Like I never took like a sabbatical from it.
Gotcha. What was it like with your peers? Like when you're in high school, when you're in college, when you're in the academy? Because jiu-jitsu isn't as popular then, right? So like, did your peers understand like what you were doing, what you were dedicating so much of your life to?
I think it's like some of them that had a little bit of an understanding of the sport. Like they look at it like it's cool. You're like, you're training this like the secret, like people don't really know. They know what it is, but they're not overly familiar with it. So they look at you and like they regard you a little bit higher and stuff. And then other people that don't really know what it is or just don't care, or just like he's just doing his martial arts thing. He's doing his karate. It's kind of twofold.
It's interesting too, probably as the UFC gained popularity, because when you started it probably wasn't popular at all, but your friends are probably like, this is so awesome, and you're like, I do this, like this is what I've been telling you about.
They think they're like, oh, you train, that's where that like moniker comes from, like you train UFC. And it's like, well, no, I train jiu-jitsu, but I've trained with
how many people do you think you're responsible for getting into jiu-jitsu?
I hope a lot, man. Like it's I was just talking to a couple of my college friends the other day. I hadn't seen some of them for a while, and like in college, like I don't think I went to a fairly small college and like 2,000 people or something, but I don't think any other person at the time that I was in college trained jiu-jitsu. I think it was the only one. There was obviously like we had real good wrestlers there, and a lot of people went on to train jiu-jitsu. Some of them were like maybe dabbling with it here and there when I was there, but nobody trained it the way I do. And now like I just saw a couple of them the other weekend, and like one of them's a purple belt,
Oh, that's amazing.
Like the other one just started training, and then like a third one we're trying to get to train. And so it's cool. It's like amazing. Now I'm seeing like the progress of it, and like some people, some guys that I went to college with that I know train now, like same thing. They're like, yeah, we started getting into it. We knew you did it and stuff. And it was like, we didn't realize like how, prevalent you were in the sport or and everything like that until we started. And it was, it's kind of cool to be like, to feel like, I hope you got into it because you knew I was doing it.
Amazing. Yeah.
Awesome.
That's why I asked about how it was with your peers. Because I got to imagine when you're in college, like there's not a whole gang of you doing practicing jiu-jitsu,
Nope. Not back then.
That's when you asked me earlier if I had any regrets or advice, I was thinking back to when I first started. I was like, if I had the time I had in college, I couldn't imagine how awesome it would be to be obsessed with jiu-jitsu in college because all you have is free time.
Yeah, right.
Like you go to class for a couple hours a day.
You would have dropped out. You'd be like, fuck this school shit.
I wish I could just go back and find my love for jiu-jitsu then because I would fucking literally just train all the time.
Yeah.
Freak.
Yeah.
So in college, you went crazy, like training?
Yeah. I mean, like, yes and no. Like I was, because again, I didn't, at the time, since there weren't like full-time jiu-jitsu athletes. Like I trained it all the time with the intention of like I knew I would train it for the rest of my life basically, but I never knew, like I never planned on making money off it or anything like that because that just wasn't really a thing, I mean, the people that made money off it were the ones that ran academies, but they usually didn't have the choice. Like they got like, Brazilian athletes or whatever who like, they came here to train jiu-jitsu and compete, and really their only method of making money would be to run an academy. Otherwise, you'd have guys. Everybody that ran an academy also had a full-time job. There wasn't like that the way it is now, where you get people that are like 16 that are just like, I'm going to do jiu-jitsu for the rest of my life. It wasn't like that.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Wild,
it's like a real sport now.
So I trained every day in college, but it was like, it was just because I enjoyed doing it. It was like that was my thing. I would go to class, I'd work out, take a nap, and I'd go train jiu-jitsu. Like that was just my routine. But now you have guys that like the entirety of their existence is built around training jiu-jitsu and trying to become a full-time jiu-jitsu athlete. So it's definitely shifted dramatically in that regard. Yeah.
So you're making your journey through jiu-jitsu and earning your belts, right? You said that you kind of rediscovered yourself at late brown, I guess you said. What was there a specific moment?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's cool that you bring that up because, oddly enough,
not to gloss over, we're going to rewind and go back to the other belts.
You
really pieked my interest.
And I think it's cool that it did happen to me like that because like it was like Drew was saying, and like hindsight's 20/20. Obviously, I wish that if I knew now that I'd still be as active and competing in jiu-jitsu the way that I am, I'd be like, then I would have been doing 2-a-days all the way from high school on. But life doesn't work like that, right? So it is what it is. I'm like, it happened for a reason. I always tell people maybe if I had trained that much, sure, I could have gotten better at a younger age and stuff. But like, what's that?
Your longevity.
Yeah, maybe I would have gotten burnt out. I wouldn't even train anymore. And there's a lot of other things I would have missed out on. So,
arguably, also like the amount of lives that you directly impact right now, not just through your competition, but one thing that I glossed over in the beginning is your instruction as well. So on multiple levels, 100%. not just across the way here at Marquez, but also with EF, right?
With EF combatives, exactly, 100%. And but with the
brown belt moment,
with the competing, I always, like I said, I always competed through most of the belts and stuff, and I had I had a lot of local success. I wasn't competing like a ton nationally or internationally because again that just wasn't as prevalent for like people, even though jiu-jitsu's always had a big presence here in like the greater Philadelphia area and the East Coast. It wasn't to the extent that it was in like on the West Coast where like the academies that were that were there that people were training at and competing, like those were probably where you had a lot more of like the Brazilian instructors who were competing nationally. And so their students were also competing nationally from an early age. Like I competed a ton, but it was in like the tri-state area, maybe a little bit in, like on the East Coast of Florida or something like that. But I wasn't like traveling across the country the way that I am now. Cause it just wasn't really that way at the time. So I always compete a lot and I racked up a lot of experience. But I never like felt like I was in that upper echelon of competing where I was traveling all over the country, competing against the best of the best. It was like, I'm just testing myself all the time against people in this tri-state area kind of thing. And so then once I started to hit like brown belt, black belt, that, it just gets tougher and tougher because now the people that you're competing against for the most part are people who are like pretty damn good, or if they're still competing, it's because they deserve to still be competing. They're not just like, they're not just testing it out.
They're not testing themselves.
Now you get people that obviously like maybe the first time they ever compete is at black belt. They test it out. There's specific divisions for them. But yeah, at the time it was like, you know, you go from white to blue to purple, you know, once you hit brown and black, you're like, these dudes are good. And I was starting to hit that point where I was like, you know, this is tough. Like, it's hard. I can't just show up and compete anymore. Like, these guys are legit. And so I was like, I don't know, maybe that's kind of I've reached that point in my career of competing where like, I'm gonna have to slow down because I can't just show up with a full-time job and as a student and all this stuff and compete against these guys that are really, really legit.
Sure.
So I kind of took a break. I would compete here and there. And then eventually, I was right around like when that Fight to Win promotion started coming around Philadelphia area. I applied for that to do a super fight. And that was like the first super fight I think I had done. You know, everything other than that was just like tournaments. So it's different when you're doing like a 1v1 thing. You're up on a stage, a lot more pressure and stuff.
Yeah.
So
Under the lights.
I was like, man, am I
Build
good
up,
enough? Am I good
build
enough
up
for
to
this?
it, yeah.
And but I you know, wound up having some success for that promotion, winning a bunch of matches and getting better and better opponents suggested for me or matched up against.
Sure.
And same thing was like I was getting matched up with guys that had like a lot of experience that were really good, that competed, you know, as pro fighters for like big organizations at the time, or had competed, you know, and won to a very high level at like in just straight jiu-jitsu tournaments across the country.
Yep.
And I was like, dude, I don't know if I'm good enough to go against these guys. And my instructor who gave me my black belt, Rob Shire at the time, he was like, he really like, I credit him with giving me a lot of confidence at the time with just being like, dude, like, fuck that. You're good enough. Like,
Yep.
What do you know, like you're damn good. Like just get out there, you know, these guys have to worry about, you know, you don't just be fixated on them. And I was like, you know what, you're right. Like, what's worse that could happen? And so I got out there, just kept putting myself out there, and you know, with mixed results, obviously you go against certain guys like that are really good. I've lost my fair share of matches, but it really helped me get that understanding and that appreciation that like, yeah, I do belong up here. You know, I am good enough.
So important to have somebody like that in your corner.
Yeah.
When you need it. And
Yeah.
it sounded like you needed it in that moment.
Yeah,
So
because you
important.
hit, you know, you go through that roller coaster of competing where like I said in the beginning, I was like, I'm not a boring competitor or anything. And so it was enough just to start competing in the first place was one thing.
Yep.
Then to continue competing over all those years and eventually start competing at the highest level. Like there are times where you need those outside influences, those other people to be like, dude, you know, you can do this. You are good enough.
Yep.
Realistically, it's imposter syndrome at a different level. It's like you were just, am I good enough to be here? And that my next question was going to be, did it come with a string of losses? Like, did you have to continue battling through losses, even to just come to the actualization that like, you are good enough, obviously, to be where you are today? But
yeah, I think I've always had those you know, fluctuations of success and failure. And you know, the success was good enough to remind me that like, yeah, I am good enough. I do belong here, and it would motivate me to have more success. And then the failures were like a good reminder that like, hey, there's still a lot of progress left to be made.
Yeah, learning experiences
And
too.
so I've had plenty of, you know, failures, but I always feel like I've learned from everyone. I know it sounds cliche, but like, I don't think I've ever like had a loss or whatever that I didn't immediately become like motivated from afterward or take something from, you know.
Win or learn.
So,
Win or learn always.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there, when you look back at all of you're still competing, you have a competition next weekend, right?
Yeah.
But when you look back at your previous competitions, is there one lesson that always rings true? Like, I know that you've said you've always learned something from them, but is there a common lesson that you could impart on the community from whether it was a win or a loss? Like, you know, just
To
competitions.
piggyback on that question, though, I have a similar question. Is like, would you have changed anything if this helps refine the question, or would you have changed anything about your journey or done differently?
Yeah, well, again, like with the hindsight thing, there's absolutely probably, obviously probably a ton I would have changed. But yeah, I think like just going in, and we talk about this with like everything that we do in life, and I know you guys would echo this sentiment as a message, is that like just going into every whether it's a training session or like showing up for work, like just always having like intent and purpose, like and this is why I love like working with Coach John a lot, is like we kind of naturally both had this viewpoint, and we try to pass it along to a lot of the fighters and stuff, is just like, don't just show up and train because it's on your schedule and it's like sweat equity and things like that. And I did that a lot. Like that's probably, to your question, Drew, like the thing that I would change the most. Like I felt like during the majority of my earlier jiu-jitsu career and like all the color belt levels, like I trained a lot, right? But I basically was just showing up and training hard, right? Like I didn't always have like, I wasn't showing up and training with like intention or purpose or like a goal. It was just like, hey, it's good enough that I'm here, that I'm training my ass off. And there's something to be said for that, right? But once you get to a point where you're like, your thought process going into training is like different. You're structuring like particular thoughts and goals around that. It's different than just showing up and working hard, right?
Yeah,
sure.
And so, if I could go back and change one thing, it would be to like earlier on to start doing that, to really show up with like goals in mind, particular things I want to work on that I want to try to accomplish or do, instead of just being like, I'm just going to show up and work hard.
Yeah,
right?
Sure.
Like that's easy, right?
Sure.
Like, once you're like in our position where you enjoy doing that, it's easy, right?
Yep.
But it's hard to like really formulate like a goal and a game plan around that, to really do the mental side of it. So that's one thing that if I could have changed earlier on, I would have done. And now that would be my recommendation to people now that are competing a lot and stuff. It's like, we all show up and train, right? That's across the board. Like if you do jiu-jitsu, you do MMA, and you compete, you probably train hard. There's nothing, there's nothing special about that, right? But it's hard to like really get your mind in a place where before every session or before competitions, like you've done the hard mental work. You've come up with you've worked on your deficiencies. You've game planned. You've strategized for your strengths or things like that. Like that's not easy to do. And sometimes your mind's just not in the right place for that. Like I look back and I'm like, man, why didn't I do that earlier on? Why did it take so long? My mind just might not have been in the right place. There could have been people along the way that were like trying to be like, hey, maybe you should, instead of just going hard every training session and like trying to just win every match hard, like maybe you should work on this and that. And like sometimes it just doesn't resonate. It takes time.
You got to learn the lessons at the right time for you, I guess.
Yeah, and your level of awareness changes over the years. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
All that type of stuff. You make such a great point, and it sounds so crazy to say, but you can, now this is whether it's office, home, or school, jiu-jitsu, right? You can show up and you can work hard, but without a goal or intention, hard work just becomes the goal, and you're actually in a comfort zone. As hard as you're working, you're actually in a, right? No, it's true.
Yeah, that's the truth. Though.
You're actually in a comfort zone,
really,
especially
you really
for like when
you're
you're
acclimated to it.
Exactly.
There's no more growth anymore.
When you're a high achiever, you're going to come up. You're going to or you're going to go in. You're going to grind it out, but without having that goal in mind, you're actually not growing, which is it's so wild to think. You used a word earlier, ritual. Right. I think everything you just described is kind of the difference between a ritual and a routine. Like you can be in the routine of going there and training super hard and grinding it out, but it really doesn't become a ritual unless you have the intention behind it and the belief in something higher, like a reason why you are there. And you used the word ritual earlier. You said, oh, it was kind of like a ritual. I was going and like it kind of dinged, you know what I mean, in my mind. Like, exactly.
There's like, go ahead, Drew.
Well, I was going to say, intention is literally a life hack. Like it changes it changes everything. But I wanted to touch on the rituals, and you said we were talking about your game plans going into practice and or competition. So what does a ritual or game plan look like for you going into a big match, like
and that's a good question, and I don't know that there's like a right answer for it. Like I got asked this question recently too with that, and like everybody's different. Like I have like our one group chat with some like the competitors, like my one friend, like he'll like as soon as the brackets come out or like and everything like that, like he's like doing like a deep dive, like researching like all of his opponents and stuff, you know. And I think it's super smart, right? You want to be familiar with what they do, what they're good at, what to expect, things like that. But I think it's different for everybody. Like for me, to an extent, I don't always like doing that because I feel like personally then I become fixated on that other person. I kind of lose sight of like what I'm doing, what I'm good at. So for me, sometimes, like obviously if I'm going against somebody who's known for a particular move or whatever, I want to be familiar with it so I don't just waltz right into it. But then after that, it's kind of like, you know what, I got a job to do when it comes to my own technique and my own confidence and self-belief. And like if I start deviating from that and thinking about somebody else and all these other factors, you know, then maybe I wind up, you know, like I'm not putting that full effort and attention to my own part.
To your game.
My mind's split in two ways. So my routine sometimes like that is just like I try to have as much, even though it's like a job competing sometimes, I try to have as much fun as I can, like just enjoy the process of working hard, bettering myself as much as possible up until the time that it's time to compete, so that I can look back and be like, you know what, like I didn't really think about competing this week. I just thought about getting better, working hard, improving. And then now that it's time to go out and compete, like I'm going to do the best with what I have when I can and let the chips fall where they may. And then just like, so kind of splitting it into like two different things, like not really focusing on competition up until it's time to compete. And then just being like, you know what, here's what I have to work with. I did all this effort to get this final product. And now I'm going to go out there with that final product and just fucking send it.
Yeah, absolutely. Shelly just had her, Shelly's a purple belt fellow eagle in the community. She just had her first MMA fight.
Yeah.
Awesome.
She's at a Gracie school in Texas, and there's a little promo video for her fight, and she said this is her first MMA fight, right? But I thought it was wise of her. She said the very same thing. She's like, look, like, yes, I glanced like at previous tape from my competitor, and like I know what she's bringing to the table. She's like, but if I get too fixated on that, it robs me of the hard work I've done and what I'm prepared to do to go out there. Like, so you can't. So I think there's a fine line between like fixation and focus.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That's a really good point. And I think like, again, there's probably plenty of people that do just the opposite and have success with it.
Sure.
I think that's where we as competitors and like human beings, like there is no one, blueprint for it. But I think for me, like we were talking about earlier, because I wasn't like a born competitor and was just like always like gravitated toward it and everything. I always have to work to instill that confidence in myself and my game. Sure. And so like, if I go out there thinking about somebody else, like I'm almost competing then, like not to lose to that person what they're good at, but I'm not competing to win with what I'm good at. So
exactly,
I want my focus to be like executing the best of my ability, so that if I win, it's not because I'm trying to not lose to their best attributes. It's to win with my best attributes.
It translates right into business too. It's the same type of thing with your competitors in business space. It's the same thing. You fixate on them all day, you don't make progress.
Yeah, for
sure. You're not you, and you're not bringing to the table
and it
the
feels
value.
like it's like to an extent like somewhat toxic, right?
Yeah.
Like you know what I mean? You're deviating from like your own space and your own thoughts and habits and positivity and what makes you, and you're letting all that outside influence, like to some extent, start to negate like what you're good at.
The one photo that this brings to my mind that I love is Michael Phelps when he's racing. I forget what Olympics it is, but his opponent who's behind him is looking over at him, and Michael Phelps is locked in on the finish line or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think he said something about it after the fact. I mean, he's like, I'm always focused on where I'm going, not the people. Next to me.
And it's so hard to do that, right? Like we're human. Like everybody,
nature,
we're always glancing over at like everybody else's lawn is the grass greener kind of thing. And it really takes time to, like, it's easy to say that you're going to do it that way, but like it really is like a full-time job to not let those thoughts creep in and stuff and to stay on your path, But that's the fun of it, man. It's not like it was easy, everybody would do it.
That's the mental part of the mental challenge.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Definitely. So we touched on competition a little bit. You gave some great advice. I love the fact that you called it out as relative. Like it's not bulletproof, right?
Yeah.
There's no one way to do it, right? It's relative. I love that. You also are an instructor, right? So we'll get into the instruction a little bit. So where I want to cover Marquez and I want to cover EF combatives, right? So if you could talk a little bit about instructing in both of those places, and then we'll get into some more relative advice for people just starting their jiu-jitsu journey.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny with the instruction too, like just like competition, like I wasn't, I consider myself to be a good instructor now because I put a lot of time and effort into it, and I have a lot of confidence in the product that I put out for it, and I've have reception from people that I teach and their responses and testimonials, and I think that can back it up. But I was I was not a born instructor or teacher by any means either. I never, like when I was coming up as a jiu-jitsu practitioner myself before teaching, I'm still a practitioner now. I still have so much improvement left to do. But looking back over the years when I was like really in my journey and growth. Like I never taught, like I just wanted to show up, train hard, get my training in. Like I feel like I barely even paid attention as like a student, you know, like now looking back as an instructor, I'm like, damn, like, man, I wasn't even a good student. I just, you know, I showed up, I trained hard. I got that equity in from like the hard work, but but yeah, I had no aspirations to like teach. I would do things well and people would be, oh, how'd you do that kind of thing? And I'm like, I don't know. I just did this and blah, blah, blah. Like I couldn't replicate that, pass on to somebody else. And I think it wasn't until like kind of that time that I had that epiphany of like needing to reinvent myself as a competitor around the black belt time, that I was like, the best way that I could do that is by really becoming much more cerebral in my approach, not just showing up, working hard, putting the effort in, but like really doing a deep dive into the science behind it, not just treating jiu-jitsu like a sport, like a physicality, but treating it like a mental game, a chess game. And I really became so much more studious. You know, and that's where like I credit a lot, you know, the guys at Movement Art, because that was what I was missing. Like I always trained hard. I trained as hard as anybody else, right? But I wasn't like a student of the game the way those guys were. And so that's like the biggest change I've made in the last few years is like, I mean, I study now as much as anybody. Like at the time I didn't. I worked as hard as anybody, but I didn't study as hard as anybody. Now I do.
When I went over to Movement Art the other day, I took Parker over there. He the one kid's class was just finishing up and they all had notebooks. Yeah. And I was like, what are they doing? He's like, oh, they're like doing their studies. Yeah, they're like doing their studies.
Dude, if I showed you the notes section on my phone, it would blow your mind. There's probably like over 100 individual, you know, note folders with hundreds of screenshots. You know, like that's where I take my notes. I don't write them down because it's easier for me to like when I'm studying matches or instructional, it's to screenshot things. So I have, because I'm a very visual learner too, to have a visual piece there along with what I'm writing out, what I'm dictating. I mean, I had to get a new phone because I was out of space. I was out of storage space for it. But that was like, that was how I learned. And then that was how, when I would teach, like I'd go back and all the studying that I would do as a student to better myself, I would go back and I'd be like, okay, well now if I had to instruct this to somebody, like what are all the details I need to hit on? What are the things that I was missing that I can make sure somebody else doesn't miss now as a student? So I started getting more opportunities to teach, you know, like at my home gym and Precision and stuff, like they needed certain classes filled and stuff, and because I was enjoying studying and being a student more, I was gravitating more to trying to pass it on to other people to teach. And so you know, I started to find myself as an instructor, as a teacher, and that wasn't easy too, because not everybody learns the way you do, and I can be very long-winded with my instruction sometimes because there's so many points that I want to hit on. And but you know, you gotta. It's got to be conducive to, it's got to be digestible for people. You know, it's got to be conducive to an hour block. And so there was a lot of growth with that, but I really started to enjoy it. I was like, man, this is fulfilling. Like being able, the stuff that I'm learning, being able to feel like I understand it enough where I can pass it along to somebody else in a way that it's going to resonate with them and to see their growth and everything. So I made a lot of progress with that as an instructor. It made me better as a student, as a competitor. And then the opportunities just started to expand from there. You know, I knew John from years of training with Sean, and John was always great to me. Like I wasn't a fighter, you know, but I would work with a lot of the fighters doing jiu-jitsu. So he saw that hard work, that work ethic, that mindset, and we developed a relationship. And then when they needed somebody to fill that gap teaching the jiu-jitsu courses, we talked, and it was like a perfect fit. And then I got to go over there and teach those guys, and that's a different, you know, area in and of itself. Like now you're going from teaching pure jiu-jitsu practitioners to guys that are, some over there are pure jiu-jitsu practitioners, some are fighters, some have like no experience with jiu-jitsu, some have limited just so that it fills the gap in their MMA. So I get to work with people from all walks of life there, different, you know, cultures, skill levels and everything. It's been awesome. And then obviously the EF combatives is a whole nother
we'll get there. Do you feel like your biggest competition win, do you feel like that's just as sweet or not as sweet or sweeter, which I doubt, than seeing the impact that you have as an instructor and a teacher?
They're definitely like, they've got to go hand in hand. Yeah, I think that's a great point. Like the feeling that I get from like every day being like when I look forward to teaching a class and like the preparation and just being like knowing that like I'm going in there to take the experience that I have, the progress that I have, and like these people trust me enough to learn from me, for me to pass it along. Like it's it pumps me up, you know what I mean?
Okay.
As much to compete. Like I treat every class like I'm like, this is awesome, this opportunity. I don't take it for granted, you know? So yeah, just like competition wins, I don't take for granted, you know, no matter how long I compete or how good I am down the line, like I treat every like win like this is, you know, I'm blessed to be here and to have these opportunities to succeed. And same with teaching. Like I teach a class and I'm like, that was awesome. Like I'm so grateful that I get to be in this position to do this, to improve these people. So yeah, they go hand in hand.
You're literally making better humans,
Yeah.
man. You know what I mean? And I'm glad you brought up the trust, because it's a big part of it, right? Because they need to trust you, but you're literally making better humans. When you win at competition, you're inspiring them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They know your story. You know, they know the hard work that you put in. You're inspiring them that they can do the same.
And I
then
hear
when you're
that.
instructing, you're hands on with them, like
Yeah.
literally giving them the tools to do the same.
And I hear that from a lot of cops that I'll train.
Yep.
They'll see me competing, and like obviously jiu-jitsu and law enforcement is growing, but it's you know, still in its infancy for the most part. Like obviously with the EF combatives, that's what we're trying to change, that culture, so that it's like it's like the standard instead of like,
It's
you
crazy.
know.
I trained with a Philly cop at Semper Fi, and he said up until the time he was training that cops in Philly weren't even allowed to train jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
It was literally, they were like, if you got caught, you would be like,
Yeah,
suspended.
isn't that crazy?
It's
Like,
wild.
It's
Absolutely
mind blowing.
insane.
Wild.
But it's because you get these antiquated, you know, rules and practices, and people don't want to change them.
It goes with anything in society nowadays. It's fucking ass backwards.
It is. It really.
If
And
you're not in the
unfortunately,
box, man.
unfortunately, a lot of times it takes like something traumatic to change that thought process. And
Yes.
And unfortunately, in law enforcement, it has to be like people getting hurt
Yep.
and realizing, oh, there's a better way to do
How
this.
many videos do we need to see online of an out of shape cop getting manhandled by a
Yeah.
I will
criminal?
say Martinez, like most of my teammates are Philly cops.
Yeah,
Most
which is
of them.
awesome.
Which
Like,
is
that's
which
so
is
cool to
amazing.
see, and I give those guys a lot of credit because I know a lot of them, like, they're not like me where I grew up doing it. It was already ingrained in my
Yep.
in my routine.
Yeah. How many times have you used it in your
Well, luckily because I work in an affluent area, not as much as I need to. But
Yeah.
I've taught a lot of guys who like work in less desirable areas, and we'll get responses from them. Like sometimes, like the day or week after we teach a course, we'll have guys message us and be like, "We used all the techniques you guys showed, and it helped. It saved our life."
So give the community, give the Eagles watching and listening just an idea of what EF combatives is.
Yeah.
Because we glossed over that. I just want to
Yeah,
make sure
so
that you plug
I was competing at that Fight to Win promotion at the time, and there was another jiu-jitsu black belt and law enforcement officer named Jay Wadsworth from the New York area who was on the same cart, and he approached me. We were talking. We had some familiarity with each other, but we'd never really like met and chopped it up.
Sure.
And he was like, "Hey man, I'm starting this company with another guy, and we're going to be teaching, you know, combatives, jiu-jitsu based combatives across the country, ideally to law enforcement agencies. Like, would you want to be an instructor, you know?" And
Yeah.
I was like, fuck yeah. And at the time I was like, who knows if this will come to fruition or not.
Were you already teaching at your home school?
No, well, I wasn't teaching combatives to police. Like, I was teaching jiu-jitsu.
Jiu-jitsu, I meant. Sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I wasn't teaching, like, I'd never taught, you know,
Okay.
police combatives really, you know? And, but I was like, yeah, like, if I get the opportunity, I'd love to. And, you know, fast forward, like, him and the other owner, Adam, who's a retired law enforcement officer, but, you know, jiu-jitsu practitioner too, and he's kind of the business end of it, whereas Jay developed the actual curriculum. The company's taken off. Like,
Okay.
I mean, it looks like they've been around for like 10 years, and they've only been around for like 2. It's like you guys, like their growth has been like astronomical because of the hard work they put in and because of the passion they have for it. And so we teach combatives courses across the country, like basically week long, you know, 4 or 5 day courses.
I didn't realize it was that long.
Yeah, it's like basically like a, you know, I mean, we're there like, you know, 8 to 4 or 7 to 3 kind of thing every day from like Monday through Friday, teaching these guys the whole curriculum so that they can go back and instruct people. So it's usually like 1 or 2 representatives from a department.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not like a whole department comes. It's like
Sure.
they send, you know, we'll get like 10, 15, 20 different agencies that'll send 1 or 2 guys. And they learn the curriculum and then they go back and instruct
Gotcha.
it.
I thought
And
you
they get
said,
access to like an app, like a very comprehensive user app that allows them to like revisit the techniques anytime that they need to study them and to continue to teach it to their agencies. You know, so we're making them instructors. It's been unbelievable because it's given me an opportunity to continue improving myself as an instructor, to touch upon and to combine the 2 most
The 2
important
worlds.
aspects of my
Yeah,
life,
you
right?
too.
My passion in jiu-jitsu and my profession in law enforcement.
Awesome.
Yep.
So it's a great program. They have a great message and company, and they're doing a really good job. I'm, honored and glad to be a part of it. And, it's such a good tool and asset for anybody in law enforcement to try to utilize. So if people aren't exposed to it, we work really well hand in hand with people to get their agencies involved. So like people that feel like they're interested, but maybe their agencies aren't, like, we'll do the work to get them involved and on board. So, any cops that are out there that are looking to bring this to their agency, like, I can't recommend it enough. And I know I'm biased as an instructor, but like, I see and I hear the feedback from people who have taken other combatives courses. We get guys that have been defensive tactics instructors for their agencies for years, and they're like, dude, the stuff you guys are showing is like, we're so glad we took it. Like, we didn't know what we were doing. We just, like.
I hear all the same type of stuff from cops, and there's a reason why I waited till later on in the show to bring it up, because I wanted you to tell your whole story and where you came through and everything that you've been through and the work that you've put in, so that they understand and can trust the program.
Yeah,
you know what
right.
I mean?
Like, I'm not just doing it because I work for that company and like, and I'm trying to make them money and make me extra money. Like this was my life was jiu-jitsu. I spent 50% of my life has been training jiu-jitsu. So all
where can if there are officers that want to get their agency involved, where can they find EF Combatives? Let's just so we don't forget.
Yes, we're very active on Instagram. It's I believe the handle is just EF Combatives.
Okay.
The website is efcombatives.com. And so the Instagram has a lot of behind the scenes looks at the techniques we show, the courses we do, feedback, all that stuff.
Cool.
Real life utilization, and then the website is where people can visit to find more information for booking the courses, for contacting us, things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Those are the two best ways.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right, so we're doing a good job of covering all the hard work that you do. I mentioned that in the beginning, right, of the show, all the hard work that you do. Let's touch on the avid reader thing for a moment, if you don't mind,
Love
right?
it.
So you did mention that there was a point in your journey, in your jiu-jitsu journey, where you became more studious, right? We talked about that turning point. Were you reading as much before that turning point, or was that like a
I was always a book nerd. Because like I said, I was not an athlete.
Growing up.
What's that? Yeah. I always enjoyed reading. I was always like, I've always been super artsy. Like before, obviously you guys are both phenomenal creative artists and stuff, with doing all your own designs for the company, which is crazy. I mean, not just being involved in the business aspect, but actually like each logo and project is like part of your own your mind. You're generated from your minds and your hard work. And I always was like that too. I could always draw really well. I played a couple instruments.
That's interesting. You don't like when you, not to judge a book by its cover,
right?
You
I look like a meathead.
I
look like a fucking. I look like I go home, and if I'm not trained jiu-jitsu, I'm just like banging like a rock against.
Eating chicken and rice.
But no, it was
What
like
instruments did you play?
Guitar and piano.
Oh wow.
I played guitar for years, and then like I learned how to play guitar. Like I legitimately played guitar, and I kind of taught myself piano. Like I wasn't wasn't good at piano, but I just kind of like dabbled with it and everything because I was really into music. And that was probably like right before I got into jiu-jitsu and stuff. So I was like, like just straight music and book nerd, basically.
I know that life.
And then I developed like the actual physicality and stuff. But
a lot of people I met through jiu-jitsu, they like to read. They like chess. They they like those mind. Mind.
Yeah, they like the stimulation from it and the challenge. Yeah, but I always I read a lot, and I was always probably the only change in my reading was like I always liked like fiction and like fantasy and stuff because I could get immersed in it. It was easy to just hammer it out and read. So like for instance, like you read like the Game of Thrones books or something it's just like that shit's so exciting and you can get immersed in it and just power through it.
Was just talking to someone about this yesterday, but the Hunger Games,
the books,
those were like they literally that's the book that comes to mind immediately. It's literally like completely like captivated me.
And there's a lot of like people don't realize there's a lot of cool series like that. They're out there that exist that don't get enough credit because like they haven't become shows yet. But a lot of times like you look at those books like Game of Thrones books like that. I don't know the exact date, but like they were probably like he probably wrote the first book in like I would think like maybe the late 90s or something. Like they've been around for a long time. Like same with like the Lord of the Rings book, shit like that.
I have that series. Like I literally just bought it and I haven't read it yet, but it's on my shelf.
Yeah. So there's a lot of series that I've like read, and I'm like, dude, I hope they make a show out of this. It'd be so badass and bring so much attention to it for
The
people.
Lord of the Rings movies were sick.
Unreal.
Yeah.
You know? It's a shame that like.
You don't like them?
I've never seen them.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, that's.
I see Game of Thrones, but I didn't see Lord of the Rings.
Continue this podcast. It's true.
exactly.
You can just take a back seat.
On fantasy.
I'll put Ernest in front of you.
What? And this is completely off topic, but it's on topic, but we're getting away from the show. But Harry Potter, did you love Harry Potter as well?
Yeah, I read the books and everything. It was
Same,
great.
same.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool. I thought
You
they
ever
did
read
good.
Harry Potter, dude?
Yeah, we talked about this. I think probably one of the first times you came by HQ. It was just me and you.
Yeah.
And we talked about this. Like, I don't read fiction.
Yeah.
You ever
that's
in your
true.
life though? Like I got
No.
into reading for Harry
shouldn't
Potter
sur-
was probably like the first like.
It shouldn't surprise you though. You know how like serious I am.
But I mean, I imagine that.
Yeah, this guy could literally tell you like what Da Vinci ate for breakfast.
Exactly.
and stuff.
Basically.
I
Yeah.
imagine that Joey at 12 years old maybe actually had some fun in him.
No, you know what
Yeah.
I was doing? When I was that young, like 10, 11, I was reading about like Mickey Mantle, Babe Ruth. Like I was reading like sports biographies,
Yeah,
autobiographies.
yeah.
Like I was reading that type of
Well,
stuff.
and this might like you might understand this. Probably like Drew too is like I look at both your bookshelves. Obviously, they're like they're filled with like some of the most like intellectually stimulating books for progress and growth and stuff like that. But I feel like, and maybe Drew would understand this more, is like you got to be in the right mindset to read a lot of those. So for me, I'm always between like two books because if I'm going to bed or something and my brain's not ready to retain the information from like an intellectually stimulating or like thought-provoking growth book like that,
Sure.
I'll hammer out some a fantasy novel that I'm in the middle of or a fiction book.
Yep.
And then like during the day or whatever, if I'm sitting down having coffee, whatever, like that's
Then
when I'll
it's
try to
different.
read some of that to try to get
That's
some.
actually so
gotcha.
funny you said that because I just was talking to my wife about this last night because Danny from Movement gifted me like 6 Malcolm Gladwell books,
yeah.
and the season of life I'm in right now, like I was halfway through it, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna pick up a different book midway just because I want to read this other book I got about business.
Yeah.
Like so, they're sitting next to each other at my coffee table. Just it's like my thought provoking like just because book and the business book that I'm trying to like gain knowledge from.
Yeah, I do. I do feel you there. I do. Like there are some nights I read before I go to bed, kind of like puts me to sleep. It's slumber time for me. Calms my mind, quiets everything. And there are some days where I pick up the business book that I'm reading, and I'm like, I had a hell of a day from a business standpoint, and like I just can't. So I've read like Tribe of Millionaires. I don't know if you've ever read that. So it's kind of the same as 12 Pillars,
Tim Ferriss though.
where there's
Tribe of Mentors.
no, there's Tribe of Millionaires. So it's a
Did you
fictional
read-
story
okay.
with personal development wrapped
cool.
into it.
Yeah, those
it's
are-
similar to 12 Pillars.
Yeah,
Or
those are
like
great.
a
So it's
Ayn
still
Rand type stuff.
or something like that. So it's still self-improvement or personal growth oriented, but there's a fictional story wrapped around
I
it.
like that a lot,
Which
yeah.
like helps my brain at those
It-
times
it's
when
like,
I'm in overwhelm.
Yeah, it's like historical fiction for me. I read a lot of
Sure.
I read a
Yes.
lot of Stephen Pressfield.
Pressfield,
Yeah,
yeah.
and
Yep.
who's great because it's like I learned so much about history, but it's engrossing because it's like a little bit. There's a little bit of a fictional twist on it because he's not just hammering you with facts about ancient Greece and Macedonia and stuff like that. He's like, hey, here's this individual who's going to be the focal point of the story, and it's going to be their process and their journey. But like, I'm gonna all the details of places and people are completely factual accurate, so you're learning a ton too.
Sure.
I think you just inspired me. I think I'm gonna take up not Game of Thrones, the Lord of the Rings books. I just haven't read it.
Dude, I got a series. Now that I know you're like a fantasy nerd too, I got a series for another series.
Should I
for
put
you.
it in front of Lord of the Rings or should I?
I think you could finish it quicker. Yeah. So like, because
Okay,
Lord of the Rings is like
yeah.
Lord of the Rings is like a
Yeah,
that's an endeavor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
That's
tell
like
me.
Yeah.
What we could just because I feel like people that
So
are
where-
listening
where-
are gonna be like, what is the bookies?
Yeah.
Where I was going with it is with this avid reader thing, wanted to understand how you became such an avid reader, which I think we can check the box on that. So recommend to the community maybe your favorite, I guess, fantasy side.
Yeah.
Fantasy.
Okay.
I don't which
Yeah,
what
this
you
is
would call
the one I was
series?
gonna recommend.
We got fiction.
Fiction.
Yeah.
And then your
Fantasy.
favorite fiction and favorite nonfiction.
Okay. Yeah.
One
that's
book
good.
each or two if you want.
Yeah, so the one I was gonna recommend to you, this series is called the Red Rising trilogy. So the first book is called Red Rising, and then but it's basically just referred to as the Red Rising trilogy, and it's really cool. It's like, it's set in like a future fictional society in which like groups of people, classes of people are organized by like different colors, so like gold, silver, things like that. And it's basically like, hierarchy, with gold being like the most like successful, prominent people like that. Yeah. And then all the way down to red. So red is basically like this, like the lowest class of slaves, and they're like, they're on Mars, and their job, the red society, is like terraforming the earth to make it habitable for the rest of society. So they're kind of like indoctrinated into thinking that they have this requirement and this goal. That's why they have to work so hard to be like slaves to the rest of society, because they're doing something to improve it, to better it. And it's really like a lie that they've been told. Like the planet's already habitable. It's being like, it's habited by these more successful, prominent colors and stuff.
Hence the red rising.
Yeah, and so they're basically like slaves. So they come up, there's like this guerrilla faction from the red society that comes up with this plan to take one of their individuals and like infiltrate the gold society, like make them like, and basically bring it down from the inside. But then you have all this like, the story is really cool because it's, since it's set in the future, you have all these different like forms of technology and combatives and stuff like that.
Nice.
But then you also have like the personal individual growth of that person. Like they have an obligation to their family and society to try to rid them of like the shackles that they've been accustomed to. But now he's also developing these relationships with the other, the golds, the other forms of society, seeing the people that are in his place at his age, like why they're led to like think and believe the way that they are, and he develops relationships with them where he doesn't have like the same ill will toward them, because he can see why they're taught to think this way.
Yep.
And then then there's that dichotomy between those two thought processes, and it's really cool.
I think you turned me.
Yeah, it's really well done.
Me to the fiction side.
I'm surprised you have not read any fiction.
Here and there.
Like, what one?
To be honest, I couldn't even name one off the top. To be honest, dude, I couldn't even name one.
Yeah,
couldn't even name one.
I haven't done them lately, but I love getting lost because they're the page turner. I mean, there
They're
are some
really
development books that'll get you.
Yeah, you read Dune, because now that's a good one too.
Yeah,
they just made the second movie for that, and it got like rave reviews, and that's another really cool one.
Okay.
So,
how about on the nonfiction side? Any recommendation?
Yeah, I would say, I don't know if it I guess counts, but like I really like that one that I gave you, the Stephen Pressfield one of a man at arms, and like a lot of Pressfield in general. I know it's like it's not quite nonfiction; it's like historical fiction to an extent. But I think his stuff is really like as a competitor, as an athlete, like he does a really good job of like of blending those lessons and that information from ancient history into like a form where it makes you feel like motivated to be like to improve yourself, to better yourself, because he uses like Alexander the Great, like all these historical figures who are like who their journeys are just straight hard work, and like they're these pillars of motivation for their people and stuff like that. And so I always enjoy reading those because I see I learn a lot about that, the mindset back then from that time and place. The ancient Greece, the Spartans and stuff like that. You're learning so much about their society, their culture, but you're also just seeing these people who like all they know is hard work. You know what I mean? Like there's no like it wasn't just like
no other option.
Yeah, there was no other option.
Zero
It's
option.
like if you didn't work hard, if you weren't like a soldier or Spartan, if you weren't like the good of bettering your society and yourself, like you were dead. And so I always like reading books like that because I'll sometimes read them before I compete, like the week before I compete. Like that's where I'll switch off because I'll be like, man, like I'm bitching about this competition, losing, and here are these guys that were like, they're going out on these battlefields with the sake of their entire civilization, on the line, and it's just like it helps put things in perspective.
Yeah.
So I really enjoy reading ones like that.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, let's tie it up with some more perspective, something that puts some things into perspective lately for you.
So
you maybe almost, we're fortunate to have you here with us today on the show because not so long ago, very recent history. We were talking about ancient history, but this is very recent history. You had quite a scare.
Yeah.
And you had quite a scare.
I know.
And I'm interested, you don't have to dive into all the nitty gritty of it.
Yeah.
But I'm interested in everything, all of the hard work that you've done over the years earning your black belt, all of the reading that you've done, all of the hard work you've done to overcome limiting beliefs when it comes to you being an instructor and things like that. How did all of those things play into you straight up surviving what you just went through?
Yeah. So obviously to shed some light on the situation in general, it was around mid-November last year. I went, had to go to the ER for this pain, this issue that I was experiencing. And long story short, it wound up being like a rare bacterial infection in my chest cavity. And so, not related to bacteria from jiu-jitsu, from training at all. I'm a very clean individual when it comes to that. But it was, the process for how this particular bacteria ended up there was very rare, unexpected, probably unavoidable to an extent. And I wound up being hospitalized for 16 days where, fluid that was accumulating in my chest cavity from that bacteria had to be removed. And unfortunately, the severity of the infection, things like that, it was not able to be removed from like traditional measures of just like the gradual process of different forms of draining that they would do. Eventually, they had to do an actual thoracic surgery, cut open my side, go in and clean all that stuff out. So it was
intense.
I think they said it's supposed to be like one of the top 5 or so most like painful surgeries. Like it's pretty brutal. I mean, they're cutting open the entirety of your side.
We've seen the scar.
Yeah,
like
this
isn't like a minimally invasive
No,
procedure.
no, it's not outpatient.
You look like you had like a foot-long scar on your
Yeah,
on your side.
I need some cooler stories for it, like shark attacks or mafia things like that. But yeah, it's legit, and it's part of me now. It's a brand, it's a reminder. But yeah, it was basically like, I had to be in the hospital like just in constant pain every day. Like it was, I don't normally like wax poetic when it comes to like painful things, but like this shit was brutal. Like it was just every day you're just like you're in agony, you can barely sleep and stuff like that. And I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't think I was going to die, but at the same time, I was like, dude, I don't know what's going to come of this. Like, I couldn't,
though.
Exactly.
I mean,
and I really couldn't even think that far ahead because it was just like all you're thinking of at the time is just like it's just not being in pain. Like that's the only thought in your mind.
There's overwhelming physical pain, but I've got to imagine, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but I've got to imagine that there's also during all that overwhelming physical pain, there's mental pain as well because you're out of your ritual.
Yeah, and I was supposed to compete like.
Not just like you're out of it for a little bit because you're in the hospital, like you're completely depleted, right? You 100%. Have to build yourself back.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's crazy. It really, to your point, it puts into perspective like how quickly all the progress and hard work you've made over the years can be wiped out by something like that. I mean, every day we get up, we're going, we're exercising, we're going to the gym, we're going to practice and stuff like that. And like you spend years doing it to get to the point that you're at. And then in 2 weeks being, a little over 2 weeks of being sedentary in the hospital, I mean, I lost like 15 pounds of like muscle, you know what I mean? I could barely, walk, breathe, like my VO2 max, my cardio was all shot. It was like, it's stuff that I spent a decade, plus like building.
I remember I had texted you because I had asked you to come to that Strong New York event with us. I had texted you and I was like, hey man, and you were like, hey, something's not right.
Sorry, I'm almost dead.
Yeah. You were like, well, I think that could have been before you actually went in because you had a little bit of a delay in treatment because you got seen and then you weren't sure and then you went back.
Misdiagnosed, right?
And you were kind of like, hey, like something's not right. I got to go back in type thing. Or I've been in for a day or so. I forget what it was.
Yeah, I wasn't like quite sure of what the severity of the outcome was going to be and everything. But it just helped put things in perspective where at the time, like I was, my only goal was just like, I just don't want to be in pain. Like that was goal number one, and then after that, it was like, I didn't know what was going to come of the situation, like what the long-term effects were going to be. But I just, in my head, I was like, you know what? Like I've done the work to get here. I've worked my ass off for so many years to be like in the position I want to be in physically and mentally and stuff like that. And like, so at the end of the day, I know if I have to do another 10 years of that to make it back to where I'm at, like, fuck it, I can do it. I'm prepared to do it. Like, and luckily it wasn't that way. Like it probably took me, that happened middle of November.
Sure.
And, I think I was coaching at Marquez, like with like a midline, an IV line in my arm, like 6 weeks later, you know? I wasn't training. I was just like, I was teaching. But I was like, as soon as I could get back on the mat and do anything to start that process of getting back to where I was taking advantage of it.
I mean, going back to, you know, what I said in the beginning of the show, the work that you do in silence, like, you know, you posted once or twice about what happened and, you know, your journey back, but you weren't on the gram like, hey, look at my line, I'm coaching.
Yeah.
Like, you were back at it, building in silence, working hard, like doing exactly what you do.
Yeah, exactly. Because like, I didn't want to be like all like, woe is me, because at the end of the day, like, I guess like, when you're going through something like that, it's like you're in a position. If you're in a position to experience loss like that, it means like you've been like blessed or benefited with having been in a position to experience that, right? Like some people that's all they know, right? They might be born like in constant pain and shit like that, and like
it gives you perspective too.
Yeah.
Like, you're like, oh, this was bad, but it wasn't that bad.
Well,
right?
so for instance, like mine was like really like random and rare and stuff like that. There was somebody else who was in there at the same time that I was with like the same thing, which is really weird. And theirs wasn't like as bad as mine. They got out like before me without having to have the same thoracic surgery. But I think there was like somebody who's like, I don't know if it was, my mom was telling me about it because, you know, she was visiting me every day and stuff like that. And there was either somebody else, like a child that was going through something similar, or like maybe not the same thing, but just something like equally like painful and bad and everything like that. And that's like a kid, right? Like here I am, like I'm a grown man going through it, where like I have the mental fortitude, the capacity, the pain tolerance, things like that. And meanwhile, there's like a kid going through the same shit in the hospital. Like that, they don't know any better. They don't know. Yeah, they don't have the tools to deal with that. Like they're just being thrown into the fire, right? And then even for like that parent, right? Like you're a parent, you're seeing your kid go through that shit. It's different. Like obviously, it was, I'm sure, taxing on my mom, even though I'm a grown man. But like imagine if like your 6-year-old's going through that. Well, like how do you deal with it?
We almost lost Parker, my son, at like 7 months old from a thing called croup, where it just like was a viral infection, and he had to be medevaced to CHOP, and we almost lost him. But I'm actually grateful for that experience, because it made put everything else in perspective. So now any little thing in life just doesn't really seem that big, because I literally almost lost my son before he was even a year old. So like almost literally nothing can affect me or my emotions.
Yeah, because you've gone to that brink of like, you know, of what would have been the most traumatic loss for you. And now
perspective is power. I always say.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah. And you're back, man. You're back. You were here.
I feel great.
You were by HQ when you were starting the build back. The last time I saw you, but now you're back, baby.
Yeah,
you look like you're in your old form.
I feel phenomenal,
you look good.
man. You know, everything comes full circle, comes to fruition. I get to sit down and chop it up with you guys, and then you know I get to go do my thing, teach, train, compete. So and that's what, like, in the grand scheme of things, like that's why, as brutal as it was, like those weeks being in the hospital, like at the end of the day, like that happened mid-November, end of November, right? And here it is, like March, April, and it's like it never happened almost. You know, I mean, there's some lingering effects, but like as bad as it was, I would have been worse off if I had like torn an ACL or something, where at least like there's some clarity on what you did, but like that's a lengthy process. Here I am, like months later, and and obviously every week I feel like more and more like myself, but I've been back training and competing now for, probably like a month or two. And so, in the grand scheme of things, as brutal as it was, like really didn't derail me that much. So I'm grateful. That's why I don't like, that's why I'm not all like, woe is me about it. Like it sucked, but like, people deal with worse, man. Every day. So
for sure.
Every day.
All right. Why don't you tell the community, most of them already know, but why don't you tell the community where they can find you? You already covered EF Combative, so how about where they can find you?
Yeah, so my IG page is Royce Dylan, RoyceDylan. My name is Dylan. Some people still call me Royce. I think they think it's my first name.
I think we met on Instagram before in real life, and I thought your name was Royce at first. But.
I don't correct people either, because like, for competing, I feel like it's good, because then like the Brazilian referees think like I'm Portuguese. They think my name's Royce, and so like maybe I get a little some generous calls, some favoritism, so I don't correct anybody. But yeah, it's Royce Dylan, and then on Facebook it's just Dylan Royce. So
okay, very cool. Thank you, not just for coming in today, but I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you for the belief in us over the years, since damn near
Oh, yeah,
the very
day one.
beginning
Yeah,
of
been a
Fuel
while,
Hunt.
right?
It was
Thank
probably
you.
what, like 2019, 2020?
Yeah, we were just talking about
Yeah.
that. Like I remember Kurt shooting me in one of those
Yeah.
or the
Yeah.
earliest sets
Like
over
some
at,
of our like first rash
yeah,
cards.
yeah.
Pretty
And
much.
dude,
Like,
it was
I remember
it was an honor then, and it's still an honor,
Yeah.
man.
Thank
Every
you, man.
time,
Thank you.
every time.
You've been with us on this journey since like the very beginning, and I appreciate the belief you have in this crazy idea we have to build the world's largest community of hard workers and restore the dignity of hard work.
Hell
Sounds
yeah, man.
wild, but thank you very
Absolutely.
much, man. Thank you.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you. Any other closing thoughts from you?
No,
No?
no, sir.
He's
grateful
just
for
ready to
Dylan.
start reading.
yeah,
His
no,
brain's
I
turning.
I think I ordered
He's on Amazon, right?
Red Rising right away.
Yeah. Hell yeah, bro.
All right, well, I'll leave the few with a reminder. Always choose hard work over handouts. Always choose effort over entitlement. No one owns you. No one owes you. You're one of the few. Now let's hunt.